Hey, Terri and Jim here to talk about this week's episode of The Walking Dead. If you haven't seen it yet, full spoilers, get out of here. We don't want you until you have. Run for the hills. And hopefully everyone else still here has seen the episode, in which case we can talk about that very last shot, which I think is what we had the most questions about after seeing the episode.
I mean, that was it was a curious last shot because we have to preface it. We saw it on a sort of
we saw
an
early version of it that was like it was a lot darker. So maybe you who have seen it on your big HD screens are like, oh, it's obviously oil or blood. To us, it just looked like
I mean, at one point you see a hole in the wall, and it's definitely, gives the impression, the dramatic impression that essentially the levee's going to break, that the wall can't hold much longer. But, there was a hole there. There was something coming out of that. At one point I was like, oh, is that a snake? Ooh, the snake coming into the Garden of Evil,
I think it's important that we are seeing something leaking, because I think more than necessarily being an immediate threat, I think it's a metaphor to sort of what we saw for this whole episode. This episode was very much about how the Alexandrians reacted to the end of the world, which is sort of funny for us as viewers and probably interesting for the characters in the show, because they dealt with this back in season 1.
They're like, old hat, come on.
They're like, no, the end of the world already happened. But I think, obviously that wall has got to come down. The rest of the show isn't going to be like, and then the wall held and they all lived happily ever after.
I think at this point there'll probably be the mid-season and will be the wall comes down. Now what are we going to do? And we're stuck basically with this group of people who have accepted like this is the way things are going to be now and all that, but they're not trained, they're not really ready for it. But drama being drama, it's going to happen, whether you're ready or not. I will say that I liked the episode. I did think it was repetitive and just a lot of wheel spinning.
It was a very slow episode, and I think, we started off with a lot of action-packed episode that sort of culminated in the what happened to Glenn of it all. And then last week it slowed down a little bit for Morgan. In this episode, it's interesting. We were talking about like Carol would be at Alexandria, but she's not in this episode. Morgan, we see him briefly for a scene, but he's not really in this episode. It really is about the effect that the end of the world has on the Alexandrians. And
I just thought it was, the opening scenes were repetitive of 3 speeches, okay? Rick's got to make another one of his speeches, this is how it is out there now. Then the next guy comes up, Aaron, he's like, I screwed up. He makes his confessional speech and basically like, this is how it is now. And then Jesse is there, stabs the neighbor through the head. This is how it is now. It's like, okay, we've been hearing this for a season and a half. We all get it, Stop spinning your wheels.
I think that Rick only now speaks in speeches, which I'm okay with because Andrew Lincoln does a great job delivering them. But when it got to the Jesse one, I had a moment where I was like, who actually just turns around to their neighbors and but I
behold this poor bastard I just
I was okay with them slowing down this week. I didn't mind that, though I think this will be the point in the season when a lot of fans get frustrated. I think it really is sort of interesting. We had Fear the Walking Dead that showed us the downfall of humanity during the zombie apocalypse, but this episode did sort of show us how people react to that on a very personal level when you do have that moment of calm, and I thought it was interesting to get that now 6 seasons in. But I'm again ready for the show to rev up the end.
I just thought this was a story that could have been told in 20 minutes of a better episode with other stuff going on. It felt like filler to me. It's like, well, we got to drag out the Glenn stuff. We're going to have to drag out the Daryl, Michonne, Abraham thing. So it did feel like they were stalling for time, and the key scenes in there were, everything related to Deanna.
Yeah, Deanna Tova Fellshed was fantastic.
Oh, she was great. Yeah, this was like this was her episode.
If you ever were frustrated with her before, I think this was the episode that really turned the tide. I think she was great.
And what do you think though of her little exchange with Rick at the end after she was, she's so short she was trying to get the guy, but she saying like, was it all pie in the sky, and him saying no, like, was he just trying to be nice to her at that moment, or does he really believe that?
I don't think so. I think that he you always need hope, because then what else are you fighting for, right? Like, you know that you're in
This is the way
world.
it is now, Terri.
I know this is the way it is now, but like, you're obviously hoping for a life, because why don't you just give up otherwise? And I think that that's been sort of an interesting through line The Walking Dead has had for several seasons, which is, what are these characters actually fighting for? And I thought when he said that to her, it sort of went back to Denise's scene with Tara, where Denise says, you know, this is the end of the world. And Tara's like, no, it's not. Because again, to these characters, this is them finally accepting that
It's the beginning of a
it's
whole
the
new
apocalypse.
crappy world. It is.
And there's romance blooming.
Yeah, exactly.
But you talking about, how they're dragging out these other characters' storylines sort of highlights to me something that The Walking Dead is experimenting on early on this season, but I think I'm ready for the experiment to be tied up, which is that it's been very nonlinear.
Right.
And I think it's rare for a drama like this that does have so many moving pieces to really just focus in on each of them individually for 5 episodes, you know?
Right.
But I think that that's where part of that problem comes from, because when you aren't with Daryl and Sasha and everyone else, and you're focusing on these people, then you're frustrated, because I don't want to wait 3 episodes.
I think they were trying to give, at least this season, they're trying to give each character their episode. Like Glenn had his episode, Morgan had his episode. Every episode is like Rick's episode. This was Deanna's and Maggie's.
Yes.
And Aaron's to some degree as well. And so it'll be curious to see, sort of where everything's going to end up overlapping. But were there any other little character or story beats, revelations that jumped out at you?
Yeah, I really like Denise's. Her, sort of coming to terms with her role. We got a little bit of that 2 weeks ago, I guess. And Merritt Weaver, who is on Nurse Jackie as well. She's just great, and I'm glad that they're giving her good material, because what a waste if you weren't.
Right.
I'm trying to think. Maggie also, more so than Aaron, I think, had that big moment. And we got the reveal that she is pregnant.
I know.
Which will be really heartbreaking if Glenn is actually dead. And it was interesting sort of having her mourn but not mourn Glenn this week, because that's the one thing that's sort of bothering me is the way they're handling the Glenn of it all.
Yeah,
when I saw that episode where he maybe or maybe did not die, I thought to me it was very clear that it was Nicholas's body being torn apart, that it was not Glenn dying there. And I was like, well, we all know what happens in the comics, no spoilers, but like, to me, I just thought it was very clear that he would survive. And I think now, either way, like, if he survives, you're like, okay, we had all this tension dragged out for several weeks that you're making us wait, making us speculate, making us read into the credits, and then, he's alive. Or if he's dead, what a sort of lackluster death for it to end on that note. I don't know. I think it's sort of lose-lose.
That would have been lame. And I did like, though, we talked about all the big speeches and stuff. I did like that they at least set up a false speech there with the food hoarding.
Yeah.
And Spencer, right?
Spencer, and so, Austin Nichols' character. Really
just
interesting.
He's like, screw it, I'm gonna get drunk.
Yeah,
But
guess
it's a
you want to
good
get
thing
drunk
he
with
did
him
it
and Abraham.
It was that bottle that saved her ass in the end. So so it's a good thing he was a drunken a-hole.
It's true. And we even got more cookies this episode.
That's
what we
more
get
cookies.
for slow episodes.
Yeah. She still doesn't know either. Like, it's not only does he not want to come downstairs, but he ain't trusting anybody with cookies
He has some
anymore.
bad cookie experiences. All right, so that's what we thought of this week's Walking Dead. A lot to chew on here, but we want to know what you think. So let us know in the comments below, and stay tuned to IGN for all things The Walking Dead.